Wolf, can you throw a football through a car wash and the football not get wet?
That's the big question that affronts you and me, right? I mean, you got to take a look at that and say, Big Ben, he's talking about Dwayne Haskins. He's saying he's pretty. Maybe he's saying he's pretty and I'm gritty. But the question is, just like you said, can you throw it through a car wash and the ball not get wet? I don't know.
You want to talk about high praise for a person's arm strength. Holy cow. Just the thought process of throwing a football through the car wash without the ball getting wet. That has to be serious velocity. I mean, that's what you love about Seven, right? Always going to give us something when it comes to, him talking to the media and things like that. But as a whole, I'm excited about this because Dwayne Haskins is the guy that has been the most intriguing in terms of that quarterback room this offseason. Obviously, we know the contract stuff with Ben, but once that got taken care of, wasn't a lot of uncertainty surrounding him. But with Dwayne, we know that how he left Washington, it wasn't the best of circumstances, right? It wasn't the most productive there. But you get this guy who is a top 15 pick from 2 years removed, and now you have him on this roster. So it's like, man, what does he look like? How is he doing? So to hear that Seven, even in a joking manner, is speaking of the arm strength that Dwayne is possessing or at least displaying, to me, I was a little bit excited about that.
It's interesting because you think about some of the snippets we've seen from his tenure in Washington, and a lot of talked about the decision making. It wasn't real great. He looked a little bit more. He stayed in the pocket. He wasn't quite the mobile quarterback that maybe they envisioned. But you still got to look at his Ohio State touchdown to interception ratio of 50-8. 50 TD passes to 8 interceptions. That's quite an excellent rating there. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, you got the arm strength. Is a change of scenery and maybe a little maturation process, will that be profitable for the young Haskins? And can he take advantage of that? And that's what really remains to be seen.
Yeah, but I also think something that you alluded to right here, when you talked about the change of scenery, he's originally from the DC area. So to have to go back and play at home and as a young quarterback, first round draft pick, it could definitely be difficult and challenging at times. I think me and you both can attest to when you're in the NFL as a rookie, sometimes your decision making isn't as sound as it should be, but you live and you learn and you gain experience from it. And that's the beauty of this situation for Dwayne. He's had his opportunity to have his growing pains, his bumps and bruises. Now is the chance to show the rebirth, right? The new improved version of Dwayne Haskins. And I just feel like, man, him being able to be here in C7 during this OTA period, which we always talk about in terms of the significance of it, being able to just have him around 7 during OTAs, I think that is going to benefit him in a major way.
I think you're exactly on. And, one of the things that you love about, in my time with the Steelers. The Steelers locker room has always been known as a pay it forward type thing. It's all about mentorship, as we were talking about last week. It's about the older guys taking the younger guys underneath their wing. I can remember when I first checked in 1980. Think about it, Arthur. Were you born in 19? But when were you born? Yeah, Zooks.
Do you really want to know? You really want to know?
No,
I'm 88. I was going to say I'm 88, baby. All right, so yeah, I'm like, whoa.
That was really a facetious question, I should say, to throw some big words out at you there. So
I like when you do that.
I come into training camp after the Steelers had won their 4th of the 70s Super Bowl. And Sam Davis, on the first day when the vets report, he goes, hey, I'm in room 221. I can't even remember, 222 back at the time, Bonaventure Hall. He said, if you got any questions, come and see me. Now, you cannot really coach that sort of ability to take and reach out to a young guy, such as the great Sam Davis did for me back in the day. And I look at it as maybe, for Big Ben, this is maybe, he's extending something to maybe the young Haskins, a little bit of encouragement. Maybe it's, it takes a little bit of maturation. And yes, by the way, my decision-making process has gotten better since my rookie year. Yes.
That's really good to know. I would like to say that mine has improved as well. I feel like it has at least a little bit. It was bad back then.
Exactly.
But also, man, the thing that I think is going to help in terms of him being here, one of the biggest flaws in Dwayne Haskins' game, it wasn't his arm talent. It wasn't an ability thing. It was the consistency, and more so for me, his footwork. You build a quarterback from the ground up. Everybody knows this. And we know what the elite quarterbacks, when you talk about Ben, you talk about some of these other guys that have dominated the league for decades, it's always based on footwork. They have great footwork, consistent footwork. Watching Haskins on tape, that's been the big thing that, just was shown in his years with Washington, where you would see him make some really good plays, some things that make you go, wow. And you understand why he was taking where he was taken. But at the same time, you'll see him get sloppy at times with his footwork. Having been here, though, Ben is the guy that's going to be able to get into his head, though. Ben is going to be able to be the guy to tell him, like, hey, that throw that you just made, you can make it a lot easier, a lot better if you step with the proper footwork, if you do this the right way. Coach Mike Sullivan, right? New quarterbacks coach. He's another guy that's going to have to be big in terms of getting Haskins' footwork, right? If they can get that consistent, sky is the limit for him, man, because he has all the intangibles that you want in a quarterback.
It's interesting because I think about the opportunity to come to another place, more or less to reinvent yourself or reestablish yourself as that talent. And just what you're speaking with Coach Mike Sullivan and with Big Ben, huge things. But think about Darius Hayward-Bay, who came here some years ago.
Yes. When I came here in 2014. Absolutely.
There you go.
Changed everything for him, right? Obviously, he was a first-round draft pick, high pedigree guy, didn't have the success that everybody would have wanted him to have in his previous location. So when he comes here, he changes his whole perspective. He becomes a special teams guru. Obviously, he gave you impact in terms of some of the gadget plays that we would use him in from an offensive standpoint. So you could see how he changed that. And then ultimately had an even better career when he came here, right? Played for 4 years here and was dominant. So seeing that, Dwayne Haskins, yes, it can be a similar case. I speak from my experiences. Coming from Buffalo, I had success there, but it wasn't what I thought it should have been. But you come here, you get in a situation, you get around these coaches, these players, this continuity, this wholesome environment where it's going to push you, but it's pushing you out of love. We're going to critique you, but it's coming from a place of positivity. That is going to help him grow, because that's ultimately what helped me grow. So when I think of those things, speaking from experience, I'm like, Haskins, man, this is a really good opportunity for you. And the fact that you got 7 here, that also takes the pressure of you having to come in here and compete to be the guy right now. You're able to really just take your time and just soak up everything that you can get in this situation right here.
See, if you're Mason Rudolph or you're Josh Dobbs, I mean, think about it. You see this young talent come in, but at the same time, you got to use that more as motivation, because I've always said competition is the best thing at any position. I don't care what position. I don't care if it's the yard marker guys or it's the ball boys. Competition is the best thing for any sort of experience you're going to have out there on a football field. And I think it's great stuff from Mason Rudolph to have a young guy come in that interjects a little bit from behind, because if you're sitting at the sidecar of the king, and that's Big Ben, right? And you're the next up, and you think, I want to be the next up. I want to be the next guy. And if you're Josh Dobbs, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, of which of course he is, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out this guy's got talent. So again, I love the fact that you fill out a room with competition.
Well, and I will say this, Josh Dobbs is my favorite rocket scientist. I know a rocket scientist. I don't know how many people can say that, but I can. All right. But going back to the competition element, I'm 100% with you. I think that's because we have that old school approach. And our approach growing up, things weren't handed to us, right? We both had to scratch, claw, do whatever it took to be successful. And then we had to fight even harder once we were quote unquote successful to sustain that. So I'm with you. I think competition makes the cream rise to the top. And the guys that can't handle a competition within practice, well, how can you expect them to handle Monday Night Football? How can you expect them to handle AFC Championship game? How can you expect them to handle fourth quarter over Super Bowl? So I'm all for creating healthy competition. And that's what they did ultimately, man, when they brought in Dwayne Haskins, right? Very low risk in terms of the financial ramifications for him, but extremely high reward. I mean, if he comes in here and he is anything like we think he can be as the 15th overall selection in the NFL draft, if he's anything close to that's going to push Mason to a bigger level. That's going to push Josh Dobbs even more. That's going to make all of those guys have to work harder, make sure they number one, have to study better, right? But then they're going to have to take it and perform and practice every day like that. And the reason I love that even more, Wolf, is because as a defender, that's going to make this defense get better looks as well, which is only going to make that defense get better, which is going to make that defense play better on Sunday. So you can see how it's full circle with this thing right here. But it's significant that this competition is created the way that it is right now.
You know, you're exactly correct. And I like how you were putting things together there. You do that in a very astute way, my friend. I would say this, okay? You know, if you want that defense to play better, you want Big Ben to play better and not have that fall off. What do you got to have? You got to have yourself a running game, my friend. Yes. You have that running game. And I like the fact that you got Najee in here. You got the backs doing the backs thing and all that sort of stuff. That's all huge and part of it. And I think the running game, we've talked about it almost ad nauseum, but you got to have that running game and you got to talk about it. But I got to go back to one thing you said. You talked about your favorite rocket scientist. All right. That's who mine was. And I met him at Heinz Field, the great Buzz Aldrin. The guy was on the moon. Actually, I met him pre-game. Wow. He was on the sidelines. It was one of the greatest moments. The guy was over 80. We shook hands. He almost crushed my hands with an iron grip the man had. Yeah. Oh, you talk about a guy who's got the guy's an amazing man. And it was funny because I'll tell you this real quick. I kept saying, Buzz, tell me what it was like on the moon. Did you see any aliens? And he goes, hey, kid, let me tell you about the quarterback. He was a center in high school, and he played with this quarterback. It wasn't Dwayne Haskins, but I will tell you, he kept telling me about it. Go, no, tell me about the moon. Tell me about the moon. But it was great. But that would be my favorite. That would be my favorite rocket scientist. Is the great.
I like that.
What an experience that was.
That's pretty awesome, right there. See, it just goes to show that you're cool, and I'm cool because I know you, and that's how we do this thing.
I guess when you're old, you can be anything, right?
Hey. But going back to what we were talking about, though, in terms of that running game, right? And in terms of the O-line, just across the board, I think that offensively, they've done a good job of creating that healthy competition like we were talking about with Haskins in that quarterback room. You look at outside of Najee Harris, right? Because we know as Najee being the first-round draft pick, he's not in a competition. Najee is Najee. But when you think about the other guys in that running back room, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, Kalen Balash, Trey Edmonds, I mean, it's stacked. And this is what you want. You, Anthony McFarland, right? You want those guys to have to compete to emerge out of there. When you talk about offensive line, you talk about, okay, Chooks and Dan Moore. You like that right there. You talk about at center, Kendrick Green, BJ Finney, JC Hassenauer. Competition, healthy competition is only going to make this team better. And I think the team did a really good job thus far of creating that.
They stacked that running back room, like you said, increasing the competition. You know, I got to tell you, the one guy that just stood out that I totally underestimated when they signed him was that guy, Kalen Balash. I watched some clips of him. And one thing I started looking at this dude going, he's not the guy that that I thought he was. This guy's got a lot more to him. You talked about him early on. I remember we were conversing about this kid, and you'll watch him, and he's got some real serious hammies. He's got some some good body strength, and just watch him roll. The guy's got some real talent there, Arthur.
No, for a fact, yeah. When we first signed him, I did a couple of film breakdowns on him in terms of just deep diving into his work when he was out with the Chargers. And the thing that I kept saying to myself was, in the midst of this chaos that the Chargers had on offense, right, between the different lineman combinations and stuff like that, he was the constant in terms of his running ability. He can make a guy miss. He's bursty enough. I love his vision and his patience, has really good size, and can catch. It's like he has the foundation, all the little pieces to be a 3-down running back, has all those things. But the biggest knock on him has been the consistency, finding the right situation and being able to do it on a play in and play out basis. Now I'm hoping here in Pittsburgh, because of the continuity, because of the coaching staff, you talk about a guy like Eddie Faulkner. When you think of those caliber guys, Mike Tomlin being around him, I'm hoping that will help him flourish. That will help him become more comfortable. And then he can just play to his full potential, because he is very talented, but the situations he's been in have really been, not the most advantageous for him, which has been the big reason why he's bounced around in such a short span of time.
One of the things I like about him too, he's not afraid to stick his chin in the chin of another man. He's
Oh,
not one of those
yes,
guys.
yes.
He doesn't shy from
Yes.
contact. I'm kind of interested because I don't know if they're going to have backs on backers in training camp anymore.
Right.
But that's a pretty vicious drill. And one of the things that I highlight every camp, because one of the things that it tells you a little something about just how tough a guy is. And it's not about what he unnecessarily does right at the moment of impact, but it's also about watching him stand in line, watching the others. There's some guys that kind of get lost in the line. They're tying their shoe. They're the trainer. Oh, my chin strap won't work, and I'll be there in a couple of snaps, coach.
Hey, Wolf. I'm glad that it's you, an offensive person, calling out these guys that line watch. Oh, baby, the line watch. They over here. One.
Yeah.
No. I can't. One, two. Yes, it's me. Yes.
Yeah. And everybody's watching with you, and they know. You know what I mean? Oh, that's you. That's Debo. Okay.
Yeah.
You turn around to the next young running back, and he goes, "Oh, I can count too." You know what I mean? But that tells you a lot about, what these guys bring, how competitive they are, and like I said, it's not just at the point of impact, but how you represent yourself and your desire to want to get the job done. I have seen guys, you've seen guys, they come back, they might have got taken a lick in their first time or two, but they keep coming back, they keep standing up saying, "Put me in, coach, I'm ready to go." And they get better. And that's what I look for with a lot of these guys, because drills aren't necessarily all about who won, who lost, but what you gain from that drill. It's like in boxing. I used to have a boxing gym. And one of the things I always told the guys, when you are out there, you're doing some rounds with somebody, they're training rounds. All right. You're just knocking rust. It should be a learning session. What you learn from the other guy when you're sparring like that, you should be able to learn something from it. And that's what it's got to be in those training camp situations.
No question, man. And trust me, I cannot wait to see this group, this team right here in that training camp setting, because it's so many intriguing storylines like what we're talking about here in this running back room, right? From a backs on backers perspective. But I think about just the physicality, right? Getting back to Pittsburgh Steelers football. That's physical football. We can't see that in OTAs. We can't get that until we get to training camp. So that's why I'm just like, the sooner, the better, because, man, that is the next stage. That's the next step in this development for this team to, get to where they want to get to in terms of raising that Lombardi.
I hope that they're able to accomplish something in the OTAs. I come from the one extreme where you're in shorts and t-shirts, not even jerseys. You're doing live one-on-ones, okay? Yeah. You come from the more moderate, but still to the extreme where, you're putting in and doing some hard stuff out there. And now I know that they've pulled back a lot, which I'm sure is good, but for old guys like me, it's really tough to sit there and go, how can it be so nice? I mean, you need sunscreen, for crying out loud. You need, but they can still, it's part of the evolution of the young guys. I think especially the more you put on the young guys and let the older guys mentor, coach, all those things, I think that's the more productive way to attack the OTAs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now, something that we also got to talk about, we're going to have a new offensive captain coming up, man. Marquise Pouncey, right? He's retired. We know what Pouncey was to this team, to this organization, to just this city. Team captain for, it feels like ever. But now that he's gone, there's a void. And it got me thinking, right? Because doing OTAs is typically where we started to identify guys that are going to be leaders. This is typically where we identify the vocal guys versus the guys that are just here for business, the guys that, are willing to go that extra mile and things like that. And it got me wondering, Wolf, I said, man, no Pouncey, who's the next guy? Who steps up? Because I was like, in a normal time, you'd be, it's Ramon. Or no, Ramon. Okay, well, then it'll be Al. Al. So now it's like, whoo, because we know with DeCastro, he's a little bit different, right? In terms of he's not the most outspoken guy. So talk to me, baby. What you thinking?
Well, it's a great question, Arthur. And I'm saying this is why they pay you the big bucks, my friend. Come up with these great ideas and questions. But here's the deal. You've handed 5-3, the number of Marquise. You've handed that off already to KG, Kendrick Green, right? You've already reestablished, because I was listening to one of Ben's
and time out. And the fact that Ben has already given him a nickname. Ben has only practiced with the guy 4 times. I felt offended. I said, you practiced with him 4 times and he has a nickname? What?
That's a great point.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
I said, man, you weren't calling anybody. Yeah, you weren't calling anybody nicknames in the first 4 practices. All right. It's only been 4. Hold on, what's today? Wednesday? I don't even know what day it is, but it's not that many practices. All right. It's been 2 weeks of OTAs. You can't tell me he earned the nickname in 2 weeks, Ben. 2 weeks.
After getting the number of the man who, when you listen to Ben talk about, they asked about Marquise, and Ben's like, oh, you want to make me start crying? Right. Want me in tears? Boo-hoo. You know what I mean? The fact is, you lose a great leader like that. I mean, we don't. I think we've talked so much about Marquise Pouncey's athletic abilities, his ability to get down the field, to pull, to trap, to just the player that he was, but the leadership ability of Marquise. It's kind of like James Ferrier. Back in the day, Ferrier was a guy, and everybody talked about him being the alpha male in the room. And I think Marquise Pouncey was thought of in the same way, that alpha male in the room, and the guy that took care of business when business needed to be taken care of on the field, that sort of thing. And I look at what you're saying, and I think, that is a loss. Ben's got to shoulder more of the leadership role, as he should. I mean, he is really the face of the franchise, basically.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, brother, as well as I do, somebody's got to step up. And who might that be? Maybe a David DeCastro. Maybe, I don't know, somebody else. What say you?
So for me, man, I had a couple of guys that I was thinking about. The first guy, I thought Zack Banner. And the reason why I thought Zack was this, coming off of the new contract, right? Obviously, he's a natural leader as well. And I think that's a characteristic that you can't take for granted. Either you have that quality or you don't. And not everybody has it. Some guys have to work at it. I'm not a natural get in front of the guys in rah-rah speech and lead. I've had to do it before, but it's not what I'm comfortable doing. Whereas a guy like Zack, he's comfortable in that role. He's comfortable being out in front vocally as well as with his play. He's also in competition to be a starter, right, on this offensive line. So I feel like he has a ton of those prerequisites already in place to potentially be that next guy. So I thought of him first. Then I thought of a guy like Juju. I said, man, Juju, in terms of productivity, behind Ben and DeCastro, he's next in line. I mean, in terms of longevity here in Pittsburgh, in terms of the contract, in terms of knowing he's going to be out there, he's a guy that could easily step into that role. Ben obviously talked about him being the leader in that wide receiver group. Now, people the question in terms of just the maturity element with him because he's still very young, but he's the other guy that I thought, okay, you could potentially throw him in there because he is showing a lot more growth. I thought that throughout this offseason, the way he handled free agency, I was really impressed with just everything that he spoke about and just the manner in which he conducted himself during that process. So I was like, man, he could be in line as well. And then the third guy, this is my dark horse candidate right here.
Okay.
Kevin Dotson. We know what Kevin brings to that offensive line. We know you talk about being the alpha in the room. You can make a case that he's arguably one of their best linemen right now, depending on where DeCastro is from a health standpoint, right? You can make that case. You factor in that, he's going to be out there. He's going to be a starter more than likely. Now, he's young, so that part you'd have to just see. But as a whole, I think that he's respected enough because of his play, and he has that tough guy, his energy. He's not afraid to put his helmet on your helmet. Like, we like those type of guys.
Sure.
So when I think of that, I'm like, he fits that mold as well. So I can see him potentially.
Well, I like the choices. Now, here's my problem is that I always equate wide receivers as China dolls. And I know they're not because I've seen Juju, we've seen him lay out some people, and so forth. And we'll go no further with that. But the fact is, you almost think you want one of your big horses up front to assume one of those leadership roles. Now, I'll give you this. Mike Webster was not a guy that led with words. He was a guy that led with effort, with productivity, multiple Pro Bowlers and stuff like that. And I kind of see Dave DeCastro similar as I see Mike Webster. It's not necessarily the volume of words or anything like that, but it's the effort, the intensity, and the greatness of the person. And I think David DeCastro could be a guy. I like Zack Banner. I think he's got that sort of out there personality,
charisma and stuff. Yeah,
charisma, right? But he needs to pile up some starts and assume that through the play. Which I think, I go back to training camp last year, watching him and watching T.J. Watt go at it through the course of preseason. Man, it was great because Zach got taken to school early on, but was rebounding and coming along towards the end there. I thought he represented himself very, very well. I hope the very best for him. We get great productivity out of that kid. But I like DeCastro talking about in the vein that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, man, if DeCastro is open for it, man, obviously he's the no-brainer because of who he is. But my thing was just like his temperament. He just doesn't seem like that type of guy that wants that. He doesn't seem like the guy that wants that burden of being the captain, because we know with being a captain, there is a burden. You are addressing the media a lot more. We know the Castro's not a big media guy either. So when you take that role, you have to be in front of that. You have to be the one answering those type of questions a lot more than, you would like to for a guy like the Castro. So that was the biggest reason why I wasn't thinking him. But if that's fine for him, without a doubt, I mean, his play speaks for itself. Who he is speaks for itself clearly. So I would like
absolutely. And I would agree with that. But, again, if it's just down to Ben, I'm fine with that too, because it's hard to replace a Marquise Pouncey, because it's, being on the sidelines, you lined up your teammate and everything with him. Just me being on the sidelines when he was down there. You know how the Hogs congregate, about the 35-yard line before the kickoff return. You're out there, kickoff return is out there, and you're getting together. And I like to go down and sit with the guys. You know what I mean? This is great. I get a little energy buzz off them because these guys are just to go out and do something that you and I love to do for so much of our lives. And so Pouncey was the natural magnet that drew all the guys. You could tell they're vibing on his vibe. And that's a leadership thing that's really hard. You cannot just bestow it upon somebody. You got to have it. You got to own it, and you got to be it.
Hey, good old Fitty Trey, man. As Coach T and we all like to call him. That dude pre-game, he's got that look in his eye.
Yeah.
Mouthpiece in. I'm like, yo, it's not even time. You're not even on kickoff return or kickoff. Like, why you got your mouthpiece in?
Like, he's ready to go.
He's ready to go. That's what that means. So yes. But like you said, man, it's hard to replicate that. But with guys leaving, this does open up new opportunities, because we would have never known that Pouncey could lead like that if that door wasn't open for him as well. So that's the part that's going to be intriguing about it, man. But I'm sure, as is always the case in Pittsburgh, the right guy is going to get that opportunity. The right guy will be named team captain. But it's always a fun conversation to have, though. And that's why we got to have it anytime I get a chance to chop it up with you, my friend.
Well, it's a pleasure always, because of the fact is, this is what we do. We love Steelers football. And when one generation of player rolls on, it's time to unpack another and to take a look at it. And I truly am excited about the possibilities of this year with this new draft class and with the change in philosophy offensively and so forth. I think there's a lot of things that can happen, a lot of positivity going on, especially as we come out from under the pandemic and we start to get the fans, you get everything juiced up again. Let's go, baby. It's time to go.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and we're going to keep those conversations going as we continue to progress through this offseason. So with that being said, we appreciate everybody for tuning in. And until next time, baby, here we go, Steelers.